Hello. Hi, good afternoon, and a warm welcome to the Singapore Airshow Media Roundtable 2023. My name is Swan, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Xperia, the organizer of the Singapore Airshow. Now, I'm really excited to be here for this second edition of the Singapore Airshow. Some of you would have been here at the inaugural edition when we did the Media Roundtable for the first time last year. And when we did so, our intention was really for Singapore Airshow to bring the industry together for conversations on issues and topics that's pertinent to the aerospace industry. Now, that inaugural edition was well received, and that is why we're here again today for the second edition. And the Singapore Airshow team aims to continue to hold these conversations at the start of each year to bring the aerospace industry's leaders together to discuss, to take stock, to set the tone and direction as we continue to navigate and explore ways to collaborate for transformation and innovation. Now, this afternoon, we are really grateful for Singapore Airshow's media partner, Flight Global, who will be leading a distinguished panel to explore the topic, Is Aviation's Recovery Truly Robust? Murdo Morrison, who is its head of strategic content, will be moderating today's panel discussion. So without further ado, Murdo, I hand this time over to you to introduce our panelists and take us through the discussion. Over to you, please, Murdo.
Thanks, Swan. And can I just add my own very warm welcome to the second Singapore Airshow Media Roundtable. As Swan said, my name is Murdo Morrison. I'm head of strategic content at Flight Global, and I'm joined today by a distinguished panel representing the two big aircraft manufacturers, one of the region's leading airlines, and the Singapore Airshow itself. Now, we're going to be debating some of the big issues facing the industry in 2023. The pandemic bounce back, the robustness of the recovery, and the risks of global economic slowdown. The fragility of the supply chain and what effect that will have on aircraft production and deliveries. The talent gap and how airlines and aerospace companies can find the professionals that they need to restore capacity and perhaps tackle diversity concerns as well. And finally, perhaps the biggest existential challenge for airlines and manufacturers alike, harnessing the opportunities of what promises to be a disruptive technology revolution driven by the need to reduce the impact of flying on the environment. In fact, I'm chairing this session today from Brighton in the UK, and I think one of the lessons from the last 3 years has been how easy it is to connect around the globe and carry out these sort of interactions virtually. Will that and rising awareness of aviation's carbon footprint change demand for air travel now that we're all free to crisscross the planet again? Well, it's one of the questions that we'll be asking today. Just before I introduce the panel, a few brief housekeeping notes. We're live for the next hour or so. There's an opportunity to ask questions via the Q&A icon on your Zoom screen, and I'll be taking as many of these as I can after our introductory discussion with the panel. And please let us know your name and affiliation. And so on to our panel today. Anna Stanley is president of Airbus Asia Pacific, responsible for strategy, commercial aircraft sales, and the positioning of the manufacturer across one of its most important regions. As such, he will be able to tell us how Airbus sees the recovery taking shape in this part of the world. Dave Schult is Managing Director, Regional Marketing at Boeing Commercial Airplanes, directing that manufacturer's marketing activities and supporting sales across Asia Pacific. I'll be asking him how this region can be a springboard for Boeing's recovery from what has been perhaps some of its most challenging years in the company's history. Now, Scoot is one of the most recognizable airlines to anyone here in Singapore and the wider region. A subsidiary of Singapore Airlines with its own very distinct identity and strategy, it's been run as CEO by my third guest, Leslie Thung, since June last year. He's a customer of both Airbus and Boeing, with a fleet of A320 family narrowbodies and 787s. And finally, Lekchet Lam has run Xperia, the organizer of the Singapore Airshow, for 13 years. Singapore was, of course, the final major air show before the pandemic, and one of the first to return in February last year. I'm looking forward to hearing his unique perspective on international travel and whether COVID-19 has changed the way that we want to network as businesses. So, Anand, perhaps if I could start with you. I think everyone was getting very excited about the industry's emergence from COVID a year ago. But 2022 was challenging for everyone. Travel restrictions took longer to go in this region than in other parts of the world. And the whole industry has been hamstrung by snags in the supply chain that have hit aircraft deliveries. So how has 2023 started for Airbus, and what are you most looking forward to this year?
Well, thank you for that question, Murdo, and I want to also acknowledge my distinguished panel members, including my customer, Scoot, today. I would look at the glass more full than empty. I mean, if you look at 2022, it was much better than 2021, and we've seen a significant swing towards opening. And 2023 is going to have the same amount of optimism, especially with the opening of China, that we're going to start to see, which is going to spur a huge amount of a domino effect of growth, not just in Asia, in ASEAN, but the world over. So I think it's quite a good phenomenon. The second point I'd like to make is in terms of you're starting to see the thaw of all the grounded fleet and then starting to come up in the air. And what that also means is fleet renewals, which are going to start to happen. And especially the fleet renewals are quite overdue on the wide body side. And I'll talk a little bit more later on what that means and what kind of demands we're looking at. So overall, I believe very optimistic about the year. China is truly a high note, which is going to open up. And most importantly, I would say the Singapore Airshow will come at a very opportune time when we will start to see that inflection point, not just for the markets and fleet renewals, but for Singapore as the center of gravity for this exponential growth that we'll see.
Thanks, Alan. Moving on to Dave. As I said in my introduction, Dave, it's not been easy for Boeing of late, but the MAX and the 787 are being delivered again, including in this region. As recovery kicks in, what long-term structural changes to the market, including here in Asia Pacific, does Boeing see being part of the new normal? And do you share Anand's optimism about 2023?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Happy to be here. The return with the MAX in service across the region has been pretty fantastic, with the Batik Air Malaysia as an example, flying one of the longest routes in the world with a narrow-body airplane connecting Kuala Lumpur to Australia. And also with 787 deliveries resuming in 2022 with the delivery to American Airlines back in August. But so those are great things for us. However, I also, a big priority for the region and for myself is to continue to be present across the region and very humbly continue to build on the trust that we have established for a long time with many of our customers. But as far as the market goes, we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But I think that the Asia Pacific, the Southeast Asia region, as recently reported by AAPA as an example, at about 50% of the recovery compared to pre-pandemic levels. So still a long way to go throughout the region. I think that a lot of the numbers that we're seeing come out of globally and across Southeast Asia are starting to show more optimism for recovery through 2023. So that I think those are really great signs as we move forward.
Thank you, Dave. Leslie, for Scoot, how different will 2023 be to 2022? And have passenger expectations changed post-pandemic?
First of all, very good afternoon to my panel members as well as friends from the media industry. Maybe I could start by saying that 2022 was actually quite a remarkable year for Scoot because of the opening of borders, especially in this region. We have managed to scale up and reinstate our capacity to about almost 80% by the end of December, which was 2 months ago. And with the pent-up demand in the region, we actually are able to secure, being the first off the block to secure much of the pent-up demand onto our flight. 2023, we remain optimistic that demand will continue to be robust because that is what we are seeing. The need for people to travel for work, for leisures is still there. People want to explore exciting destinations as well. I think that is what we are seeing, and that is where Scoot, as a low-cost carrier flying to many exotic destinations, can offer to our customers. We spoke briefly about China. China, yes, is an important part of our network. Back in 2022, we were only able to maybe reinstate about 10% of what we used to do to China pre-COVID. But with China now reopening, it actually gave us a lot of opportunity to scale up our operations in 2023. In terms of customers, I think what would have changed over pre-COVID compared to now is two things. One, I think people are more connected. I think they're using a lot of digital device to search for information, to book their travel. I think that is where at Scoot we are also continuing to invest in a digital platform to make sure that we can engage our customers in the right way at the right time, and the offers are always there for them. So we look at how we can further improve our website booking, which we are now doing a test and hopefully can roll out a new booking engine by the end of this calendar year. And in terms of how we engage the customers, we also open up many touch points in terms of to gather feedback from them through the regular surveys, so that at Scoot we can continue to improve to provide service to them in this coming years.
Great, thank you, Leslie. And finally, Chet, I'd like to ask a question relating to air shows. We had almost 2 years of very little B2B interaction internationally. The traffic recovery in 2022 proves that businesses still want to come together face to face. Is this something that you're seeing in the air show world?
Yes, definitely. But before that, good afternoon to all my fellow panelists and also the media that is attending this session. Yes, Murdo, I think we are seeing that. The physical shows are coming back. And I think it's really because us humans, I think we're all social creatures, right? We need to have that handshake, that eye contact, and just to have that face-to-face physical conversation, be it to network, be it to strengthen existing business ties, look for new ones, look for business opportunities, or close that business deal. So for Airshow 2022, which happened early part of the year in February, Xperia here, we took on the challenge to organize a large-scale physical event. Since the start of the pandemic. So it was a challenge, there are just so many things to do to balance the managing large crowds and also make sure that the well-being and the safety of all our attendees are taken care of. So that journey was really a fruitful one. And we managed to pull it off. And I think all eyes were on Singapore Airshow because after that, we saw a revival of large-scale physical events coming back, not just in Singapore, but also in the rest of Asia. And I think that's important, for the recovery and growth of the MICE industry and also the aviation industry. So I think it's great that exhibitors and trade attendees are more than ever begin to see and understand the importance of having a physical event.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to Singapore Airshow next year, and indeed the other air shows that are due to take place across the world in 2023. Now, I want to move on to an issue now that we could talk about. We could have a whole webinar in itself just talking about, and that's sustainability. So, Anand, perhaps if I could start with you, and I think when we look at sustainability it's sometimes you talked before about glass half full, glass half empty. It's perhaps sometimes easy to take a more negative view and look at this as being a threat to the industry, and climate concern being a negative factor for the growth of the industry. But I think what we're seeing at the moment is an incredible burgeoning of technology and opportunities that come along with the need to cut the industry's carbon footprint. Obviously, Airbus and Boeing, you've both been very, very active in this field. And perhaps you could talk about how important the quest for zero net carbon is for the industry, and just perhaps talk about some of the things that Airbus has been doing to address this.
Sure. Well, thank you for that question. I mean, at Airbus, our CEO, board, everyone, if you were to ask us what our top three objectives were, all three of them would be sustainability driven. So we are clearly committed to this, but so are our peers. I mean, Boeing and the industry and the airlines and our customers like Scoot, they're all committed to this. That's the great thing about this. So we're together in this. We look at multiple vectors out here. I mean, one of them is just fleet renewal. Only 20% of the aircraft today flying are brand new aircraft. And each of these aircraft, as they come in, they immediately give a 25 to 40% improvement in fuel burn, irrespective of the OEM that makes them. The second area, which is most near term and exciting, is that of sustainable aviation fuels. Again, this is an area where both Airbus and Boeing are working together, and my colleague from Boeing would be glad to talk a little bit about what they do in this field. And thirdly, we are also looking at disruptive technologies. There's different views of this. For Airbus, it's more about looking at hydrogen aircraft, different designs of the wing, different softwares, operating systems, etc., which can come in. Last but not least, it's more about the entire industry. It's an entire ecosystem that has to come together, not just airframers, engine manufacturers, and airlines. It's airports. It's wider ecosystems, including the energy industry, universities, think tanks, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty exciting. I'm going to refrain from getting into too many technical details. It is daunting, but a lot of the bricks are there today. And if you even look at what we've accomplished in the last 50 years, it's quite substantial. So we're looking forward to really meeting this goal.
Thanks, Anand. Dave, if I could move over to you. I mean, the environment is nothing new for Boeing. The 787 was launched as a more environmental wide body, almost 2 decades ago. Where is Boeing on this journey?
Yes, I think our stances are closely aligned. I think that fleet renewal is going to be one of the biggest drivers for the improvement in sustainability, particularly across Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. Like Anand mentioned, every new generation airplane is at least 20 to 25, maybe more percent fuel improvement. So that's good news. Second is the usage of sustainable aviation fuels. We've heard a lot of discussion over that over the past few years. And some of the things that we've been doing in terms of working with sustainable aviation fuels is partnering with companies like Epic Fuels in North America, where we actually purchased about 2 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuels to support our manufacturing, flight testing, and flight activities across North America at our facilities. So that's great. Additionally, we very much focus on the movement of airplanes in and around the airport as we look for opportunities to improve operational efficiencies for the airplanes to reduce emissions and reduce our carbon footprint. And then also, like we mentioned, new advanced technologies. For example, We have recently partnered with Wisk and the Cora Wisk aircraft, which is a vertical takeoff and landing all-electric autonomous aircraft. That'll be very interesting to see how that technology plays out for the future of sustainable aviation.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. Leslie, from an airline's point of view, sustainability, I guess, is about two things. It's about efficiency. It's about using less fuel and saving money and running a more efficient operation altogether. But it's also about the image that your brand has and that aviation has as a polluter. What are you what is Scoot doing in terms of sustainability? What can you do as an airline to improve both the image of aviation and also take steps to reduce your carbon footprint?
I think first of all, maybe I could just reinforce that together with SIA, meaning the whole SIA group back in May 2021, has given our commitment to reach net zero carbon emission by the end of 2050. But having said that, I think we believe that having the new generation of aircraft in our fleet is actually one of the most efficient way of reducing carbon emission. So when we look at how Scoot, together with other airlines, can play a role in terms of sustainability, reducing the carbon emission into the environment. First of all, I spoke about the investing in new aircraft. I think it's important to note that at Scoot, our average age of fleet is 6.5 years. I think compared to an industry of about 15.5 years, that shows that Scoot actually continue to invest in new generation of aircraft. Even during pandemic, we actually take delivery of the 320neo as well as the 321neo. At the same time, retiring some of our older generation of the 320 CEOs. And our plan is actually to retire all the 320 CEOs by the end of 2025. So by then, Scoot will move to all new generation aircraft beginning of 2026. I think that is an important levers that we are leveraging on. The other part, when we look at it, is actually how we can further improve operational efficiency. I think we have also invested in new flight planning system, which will help us to make sure that the flight path are planned properly, the takeoff rates are calculated properly, so that it does reduce carbon emission and reduce fuel burn. The third point that we actually look at is actually we have also, together with SIA, tried the sustainable aviation fuel back in July 2022, and the trial is going on for a year and is projected to reduce about 2,500 tons of carbon dioxide emission into the environment. The last point is that we are also looking at, and we have offered this voluntary carbon offset program to our customers who choose to offset part of their carbon emission during their journey. So collectively, within the group, we are doing a lot in terms of making sure that because we believe that customers not only care about our business, they really also care about how we go about doing our business. I think these are steps that we are taking forward to make sure that we continue to be committed in terms of our sustainability target, and we continue to show that the company is progressing as per what we intend to do in the coming years.
Thank you, Leslie. That's great. Good luck with that. Chet, if I could just move to you. Sustainability as a theme has obviously been a major topic of air shows recently. Looking ahead to Singapore Air Show in 2024, how important do you think sustainability will be as a conversation point at the show?
That's definitely going to be a key focus for Singapore Air Show 2024. So I think all the panelists, Boeing, Airbus, Boeing, Scoot, have been talking about sustainability within the aviation industry. So definitely we'll be curating conferences around this topic. But also at the Singapore Air Show, we also focus in terms of sustainability, in terms of talent pipeline. So that's, we always have an Aero Campus that, gets the younger generation to get interested in aviation. We bring them to the air show. So that's also sustainability in a sense, but for the talent pipeline. We also have startups, we call it a What's Next segment in the Singapore Air Show. That's really sustainability in terms of innovation and technology. So I think we are working sustainability across the board, be it in the industry itself, be it in the talent pipeline, or be it in innovation and new technologies. So that will always continue to be the focus for Singapore air shows going forward.
Thank you, Chet. I want to move on now to supply chain, and this has been perhaps one of the biggest stories of the recovery in 2022. We all looked forward to recovery, and we saw a recovery in 2022, a very strong recovery. But there were problems, most of which were outside, to do with external factors, from war in Ukraine to rising inflation to the talent gap, and right down to small suppliers struggling to restore the capacity that they had in 2019. So I want to start with Anand and Dave, and just can you give me your thoughts on where you are in terms of the supply chain challenges going into 2023? Are things going to be bad for a while yet, or do you see things improving? Anand, can I start with you?
Well, post-pandemic, the key thing is we have to recover from the ramp down that we've done with the pandemic. And so the thawing of our supply chain has been going on since 2021 through 2022. Yes, there were challenges in the ramp up, as you have articulately put, due to the reasons you mentioned. But we see an upward climb. There has been a ramp up. Between 2022 and 2021, we've ramped up at about a rate of about 8%. And we would like to continue to see that trajectory through 2023 and 2024 and beyond. The reasons are not just because of demand, customer fleet renewal, but we're also saying that we need to look at the longer term demand, which is coming out in terms of the growth of the Asia Pacific region in particular, where we see up to 45-50% of the global demand coming from this region, which is why we need this kind of a ramp up, especially in our single aisle area, is what I would like to put at. So given the demand, the ramp up, I think, is going to start to see a continued trajectory. And to deal with that, it's not just the supply chain we need to look at, but also the talent, the recruitment, and things like that, which I know you will be talking about in our next section. And I'd like to address what we're doing in this talent area to prepare for the upcoming ramp up, to prepare for the demand.
Well, let's move on to talent, as you said, in the next question. But Dave, if I could move on to it's often said that ramping up is harder than ramping down in many ways. When you're obviously talking to customers in Asia Pacific, how confident are you talking to them and your colleagues and your sales colleagues talking to your customers that they will get their aircraft that they've ordered in time?
Yeah, the supply chain. It's been written about very much over the past couple of years, and we are really focused on doing what we can and be as proactive as possible in supporting our supply chain. In fact, we are even more focused with having teams on the ground to help along and help to manage our suppliers. And I also agree that the increasing production, I think that's going to be a key factor. That's a key factor for the industry moving forward. Southeast Asia will be outpacing the global market with its growth rates over the next 20 years, with over 5% annual growth rate, and we're forecasting about 4,200 new airplane deliveries in the region alone. So it's very important for us to make sure the supply chain stays and helps us to achieve those goals and those metrics as we move forward.
Great, thank you, Dave. Leslie, from an airline's point of view, how have the supply chain problems and the ramp up challenges, how are they affecting you as an airline? And in terms of getting aircraft in time, are you confident that you can meet the schedules that you are promising to your customers, to passengers? Because all that's obviously, when you do a schedule for the coming year, that's obviously dependent on getting aircraft that you've ordered in time. What do you, how is this affecting you, and how confident are you that things can be resolved in 2023?
I think I should start by agreeing with Anand in the sense that I think the situation has improved from what we see from an airline perspective. I think it's important that the airline continue to interact and engage the OEMs.
I think we've lost Leslie for a second there. I'll come back to Leslie just in a second. Chet, perhaps I could move on to you with a question about. Sorry, let's get Leslie. You've come back. Let's carry on with Leslie rather than cut you off in mid-flow.
No problem. Sorry about that. I was just sharing that I think it's important for the airline, at least as good perspective, to continue engage and have that dialogue with the OEMs, to have that regular conversation to make sure that we are aligned in terms of what the airline are expecting and what the OEMs can deliver. As I mentioned just now, when we are back at 80% of pre-COVID capacity in terms of schedule, I think we were able to deliver the schedule that we have promised to our customers by flying the aircraft that we bring back to service. But I think what is important again is really the regular dialogue that we should have with the OEMs to make sure that we are keep abreast of the latest developments, so that we remain flexible and nimble in terms of our adjustment.
Okay, thank you very much. Chet, air shows, obviously the air shows often get the stuff that we as media report on tend to be the aircraft orders, but an air show, of course, is also about bringing together that whole supply chain in one place and facilitating conversations between suppliers and their customers, perhaps the aircraft manufacturers. How do you see it from your side of things as an aircraft, as an air show organizer? You know, are you able? What role does an air show play in sort of bringing the industry together to facilitate conversations?
So I think as far as from the supply chain perspective, I think we as an air show organizer, we have to make sure that the show site, all the requirements that were put forth, the orders that were made for the show site needs to be put up on time and make up to the expectations of our clients. So I think we have to deal with supply chains as far as building materials and all that. So we have to plan early, make sure that we already put in early and understand where the sources are coming from. Because from us as a platform, as an airshow platform, is we need to deliver what we promised to all our exhibitors and trade attendees. So that's where we're coming from. Just like to circle back on sustainability. So I talked about what we're doing at the airshow, but from us as an events organizer, we're also putting effort as to how we run our events. So as an example, our Changi Exhibition Center, that our 40,000 square meters facility, the roof of the entire exhibition hall is just has got solar panels on it. So I think that's one way that we are also trying to run the exhibition in a more environmentally friendly way. And we are cutting down printing. I mean, show directories are no more printed on paper. They're all on electronic forms. So those are also little things that we do to try to, run the exhibition in a more environmentally friendly way. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's very interesting indeed. We spoke about talent, the talent challenge before, and that obviously affects again the whole supply chain, from engineers and shop floor workers in very small companies up to up to Airbus and Boeing, and of course the airlines as well, in terms of maintenance crew, in terms of pilots, in terms of other staff. Perhaps we can ask a question to all of you about how you are addressing the talent challenge. How does Airbus persuade the talent that it needs to join the company?
Well, on this area, I'll tell you that this is one of our biggest challenges in the aerospace industry for all of us. We have to spark that desire and love for aviation, which is so dear for us. But we're excited. In 23, we plan to hire about 13,000 employees at Airbus. And I would say half of them, more than half of them, would be new positions, especially for younger graduates, which is, I think most of them would be people who we need to excite to join this industry. What's the driver for this? It's a combination of the ramp up, which we were talking about previously. And secondly, a big core of this is the decarbonization, the engineering, and the research that goes into sustainable aviation.
Okay. And Dave, a similar question to you. How big an issue is this for Boeing, and how are you addressing it? Not both by Boeing and I guess also your supply chain, because getting that talent into your suppliers is sort of equally important.
One thing that was really interesting to me was walking the streets of Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and I overheard a couple of high school, college kids talking about how cool aviation and aerospace was. I think if we went back 3 or 4 years, those same group of people would be talking about tech industry or startup growth. But I think that the interest in the impact that our sustainability messages and our stories and the advancement of new technologies, I think is really starting to engage the newer generation aerospace engineers and manufacturers. So it's pretty exciting to see. And likewise, Boeing is committed. We brought on 15,000 new employees last year as we spool up operations coming out of the pandemic. And we are also planning to hire about 10,000 more employees this year. So I think that there is lots of growth opportunity for employment and people to join the aerospace industry, and it's something that I'm very excited about. And hopefully the newer generations can also be equally as excited about the new technologies.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Leslie, we've heard a lot about the pilot shortages, particularly in North America, where the particular structure of the market there with regional feeder airlines is really they've really struggled to find pilots. What is the issue with recruiting pilots and other professionals in your market in Singapore and Asia Pacific? Do you face some of the same challenges, and how do you see the situation going forward?
I think one point that maybe we can go back is what Dave said about the airline restoring capacity, the Asia Pacific airline restoring capacity. If you look at it, the whole Asia Pacific is at about 50% of pre-COVID based on AAPA's statistics. But as I shared earlier, we are at about 80% in terms of pre-COVID capacity. The reason why Scoot can reinstate 80% of the pre-COVID capacity in such a swift manner is basically because we have kept the core team during COVID. During COVID, we actually kept our pilots. We continue to train them so to make sure that they're current in terms of their qualification. We have kept a core team of cabin crew as well, which is why we are able to reinstate the market capacity as soon as we can. But having said that, we are looking beyond pre-COVID capacity, and we have actually started recruitment almost about 7-8 months back, where we started to look at cadet pilots, we look at direct entry pilots, and we also on track to recruit the number of operational staff, including ground staff, as well as engineers and cabin crew to support our continuous ramp up in terms of capacity restoration. So I would say that while there are challenges in terms of the labor market in Singapore, but as Scoot, I think we are still on track in terms of recruiting the number of resources that we require to continue our scale up of operations in the coming months.
Great, thank you. Now I'm just going to move on to some, I'll just ask Chet's views on that before I move on to some questions from the media, because we've got some great questions coming in. So Chet, very, very quickly, perhaps, what you touched on this earlier, but what role does Singapore Airshow play in encouraging talent into the industry?
So in the Singapore Airshow, I think started from 2016, the edition, we have a segment called Aero Campus. And this program aims to bring students from 14, 15 years old upwards till young working adults. And the whole idea is for the younger chaps, the 14, 15-year-olds, to spark their interest, to inspire them, to let them know that there's a thriving aerospace industry, not just in Singapore, but Asia Pacific is really the fastest growing region as far as the industry is concerned. And then for those people who are at the age of looking to further their education, there's also universities there or institutes of higher learnings to really showcase the breadth and depth of aviation, further aviation education is available, the courses that are available. And of course, we also conduct matchmaking for young working adults who are looking for jobs, and vice versa, companies that are also looking for new hires. So that's how we facilitate the different stages to get the interest and also to make sure that the talent flow is going back to the industry. So that's how we help to facilitate that at the Singapore Airshow. Okay,
thank you, Chet. Now, as promised, we're going to move on to some questions from the audience. We've got some great questions coming in. I've got one from Danny Lee at Bloomberg. This is for Leslie at Scoot, but I think the others can come in afterwards as well with their views. And, you know, we spoke earlier, I think all of you talked about being optimistic about 2023. But obviously there are a lot of economic headwinds facing the industry, you know, rising interest rates, higher cost of living. How do you see this impacting air travel and booking appetite? And I guess, Leslie, for Scoot, it's, you know, you're a low-cost airline. A lot of your travel is perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's discretionary travel. Is that one of the first things to go when people start worrying about paying their mortgages, paying their rent, paying the supermarket bill?
Yeah, I think first of all, thanks for the question. Yes, we are aware of the headwinds that are coming our way, whether it is rising interest rate, inflation, or escalated fuel price. But I think what is important is really when you look at this region, based on at least what we have seen and in terms of what we are seeing in terms of the forward booking, they remain strong. As I said, we are optimistic that 2023 will remain robust in terms of bookings in this region. And the part that China is reopening give us additional opportunities to really tap on the pent-up demand that was not there last year, that is likely to happen in 2023. But having said that, I think what COVID has taught us is really we need to be nimble and flexible in terms of our network deployment. Back in 2022, when we look at the whole market, when market starts to reopen, we actually divert resources to tap on the pent-up demand. So likewise in 2023, depending on how the whole world is performing, how each individual region is performing, we will then have to look at in terms of our aircraft and network deployment and see whether necessary adjustments will need to be made so that we can continue to tap on the pent-up demand.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to get Anand or Dave, do you want to come in briefly on that? I just want to try and get through as many questions as possible. So I'll just ask you to be quite brief on that. So threats of economic headwinds and the effect that might have on demand for flying in 2023.
If I can go first, one thing also that I see is just the sheer growth in the middle class across the Southeast Asia region. So I think the population that is willing and able to travel is growing despite the other headwinds.
Okay, Anand.
I think the demand still far outstrips the supply. At Airbus, we have a backlog of over 7,000 aircraft today. And so, and again, within that, Asia Pacific, 50% of the world's demand. We look at this demand till 2040 at this point of time in terms of our forecasts.
Okay, I'm going to move into, we've got some great questions. I want to, if you could try and keep your answers as brief as possible, that would be great, and we can get through as many questions as possible. So a very different question from my colleague, Greg Waldron at Flight Global. How engaged are Asia-Pacific governments in regard to the significant and expensive infrastructure necessary for large-scale implementation of sustainable fuels, such as SAF, and perhaps in future, hydrogen as well? So how do Asia-Pacific governments need to be more engaged with this, or how far along that road are we? Dave, do you want to come in on that one?
Sure. I think that it will be interesting to see if market demands or policy drive the usage of the increased usage of sustainable aviation fuels across the region. But of course, we are very engaged with all governments on the topic. So with the promotion of improving sustainable aviation fuel usage and the reduction of the carbon footprint of the industry.
Okay, Anand, from your side of things, what do airports and governments and the supply side of things need to do to get to make SAF more available to airlines?
I think it's a mixed bag. If I look at Asia Pacific, still lags Europe and the US. But in terms of governments, best in class, we have an agreement with the CAS, Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. And Singapore is probably the best in class in terms of how they're developing this area. But there's also airports, like we have agreements with Korean Incheon Airport. We have other activities going on in Japan, which we see. And lastly, private sector is now waiting for governments. We see airlines such as Qantas, Korean Air, Air New Zealand, whom again, we have agreements and projects going on, who are just going out on their own in these areas.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, you talked earlier about SAF. How availability of SAF in the region, is it difficult? Is it harder in Asia Pacific perhaps than in other parts of the world where it's still in its very early stages? But where do you see things going in terms of availability of SAF in the region in which you operate?
Yeah, as I mentioned just now, we've actually started a pilot in terms of uplifting SAF on our flight from July 22, which is ongoing for about a year. I think what is important is actually the whole ecosystem coming together to see how we can make SAF more available and more affordable. Because right now, SAF, if you look at the price of SAF, is actually about 4 to 5 times of the jet fuel, which will not be sustainable from an airline perspective. I think you need the whole ecosystem to work together to make sure that if SAF is the key lever to reduce carbon dioxide emission, then we will need to work together within the whole ecosystem to make it available for all airlines.
Great. Okay, thank you. I've got a question from a colleague in India, Bhavya Velani, asking a very specific question about India and particularly the wide body market in India. Let's start with Dave on that one. So very specifically looking at India, what are the prospects for the wide body market there?
Yeah, the wide body market in India is interesting. Of course, we're always talking with all of our customers across all of the regions. But currently today, with the 777 and the 787 having about over 70% of all inbound and outbound flights in and out of India, it's really enabled a lot of the traffic in one of the highest growth markets in the world. We're forecasting India to grow, South Asia to grow at about 7% annual over the next 20 years, with over 2,400 airplanes coming into the Indian market. So lots of opportunities there. And moreover, the 787 and 777 have been dominant players in nonstop flights from India.
Okay, thank you. Anand, the Indian market? What are the opportunities there for Airbus?
Well, I think the opportunities are the per capita growth and the demand that we're looking at over the next 20 years. And we've been successful in enjoying multiple customers and their trust in us in India. And we hope that continues on. That would be my short answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Chet, I've got a question for you from again from my colleague Greg Waldron at Flight. The next Singapore Airshow we talked about in 2024. Looking forward, what will be the big commercial themes at the show? Okay,
24. I think that of course the biggest thing will be sustainability. I think that will be covered at the Airshow in 24. And I think the other area, the other big commercial theme, is what Greg calls it, I think it will be disruptive technologies. I guess what are the new technologies we are seeing on the frontier that could help us as we go forward. We face more challenges within the aviation industry. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, as I say, we're all very much looking forward to Singapore Airshow in 2024. We've got a question from Danny Lee again at Bloomberg, and this is specifically for Leslie. Leslie, based on your 2023 plan at the start of the year for aircraft deliveries, do you expect all of them to arrive this year, or is there already slippage? And if so, how much is that slippage, and what does that mean for capacity?
Okay, I think I can start by saying that if you look at pre-COVID, that is March 2020, Scoot, we had 49 aircraft comprising the wide body as well as the narrow body. If you look at where we are today, we are actually having 55 aircraft, which is an increase of 6 aircraft count, which actually give us the resources required for us to continue to reinstate capacity, not only just reinstating, but actually to go beyond the pre-COVID capacity that we are planning for 2023. So going back to where I said that we have the resources, both aircraft as well as staff, to actually enable us to go continue our ramp up in 2023 and try to go beyond pre-COVID capacity. In 2023, we will continue to receive a limited number of aircraft, and that is still on plan.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Leslie. We're just about coming to the end of the session now. I think we've probably had all our questions. I just really wanted to finish by asking everyone on the panel, imagine that we're meeting here in 12 months' time. What will 2023 have been like for you? What do you expect the year to be like? Just very, very quick summary. And Anand, if I could start with you.
It'll be the year of Asia Pacific, and not just a recovery, not just a growth, but something where it will drive a buoyancy for the rest of the world.
Okay. Dave, how do you expect 2023 to go?
Same way as I started this talk, very humbly continuing to build trust and continue to support relationships. I think that we'll be in a much better position as we go through the year, and we're very optimistic on the markets across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the rest of the world. So.
Great, thank you. Leslie, we're sitting here in a year's time. How has 2023 gone for Scoot?
I think we started the year quite well. I think 2023 will be another defining year for us, despite all the challenges that all airlines are facing. I think we hope that come 2024, we'll be sitting here talking about, despite the challenges, all the achievements the airline industry together with the OEMs has achieved in 2023.
Great. Okay. And Chet, in a year's time, will be a matter of days away from the 2024 Singapore Airshow. What shape do you expect the industry, your exhibitors, your visitors to be in when we come back here in 12 months' time?
So in a year's time, of course, I'd like to be here, of course, telling about, with the help and support of all my fellow panelists here and all our exhibitors, how great the Singapore Airshow 24 is lining up. and to share really the program of Airshow 24.
That's great. Okay. Well, listen, thank you. That's about all we have time for. We could have covered, I'm sure, many more topics and questions, but I would like to thank all our panelists for giving up their time today, and to you, the audience, for asking such insightful questions. Thank you very much indeed.